Alright guys, TacticalRab again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Welcome back to Valorant News. Huge drama in the North American challenges and in the professional scene, with Turtle Troop, formerly known as Squirtle Squad, potentially getting screwed over by evil geniuses. They wanted to sign, apparently, one of the players from Turtle Troop. They've now stopped that deal, and it's really ruined all of their roster chances going into another week of challenges action. Very much enjoyed your thoughts in the comments below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. I'd greatly appreciate it. Just wanted to mention a few things, of course, about the lock-in event in Sao Paulo. Thought some nice words here from Dephh. Thought this was quite cool as well from Yinsu, talking about how this is the night before when Boaster was kind of doing his VOD review and getting ready for the game the next day, which most certainly paid off when they got to that final map where they played Icebox, down 11-3, and still made the comeback regardless. Now, I know there was some drama, of course, about the stadium, right? So this is, how it tends to go in Brazil, where the fans in Brazil are usually there, pretty much regardless of the sport, for the Brazilian teams as opposed to for the sport itself. In different regions it kind of differs a bit, right? Where in certain countries, probably in the majority of countries, fans will stay around to, watch the trophy lift for the team that won and watch the post-game interviews and this type of stuff. Whereas, it's been a thing in Brazil where when their team lose, like the entire crowd is just dipping out of there as soon as possible. Now, I know that there was, some other kind of opinions on this from around the league because, as even Dephh says, the venue was very hot in the venue even before the show match started. I know that, and also like public transport closes and people just wanted to get out of there because, okay, the game's over, wanted to go, so it was hot in the venue and all this. Now, look, in fairness, right, had Loud won, would they have dipped immediately, right? Would they have got out of there to get the public transport and because it was too hot in the venue? Maybe not, so it's understandable maybe from both sides. But I know that Tarik was, I think he's on the money here, but I also, know he was getting a lot of flack for this, as maybe should be expected. But I guess he was on MIBR, right, briefly in the CSGO days, and says, in respect and to clarify yesterday's message, an empty arena for a trophy lift is heartbreaking to see. Let's do better for next time. And I do think, honestly, that we're quite lucky here that Loud made the run that they did and didn't lose, for example, to NRG, because we know what's happened at the Rio Major, right, where there was no Brazilian team in the final, and it was basically just a dead venue. So there's been quite a lot of controversy on whether, should they go back to Brazil, all these type of questions. But Brazil's got some great teams and some great passionate fans. So, I think it's just a bit of a question to be raised there. And Tarik, I think, has a fair point, but also there were some other caveats that I just mentioned to the situation. Also, a quick note on the map set that was being played, because I know that we did discuss on the channel, like, would we see much Lotus? Would we see much Harbor? Because single limb format, quite tricky to, if you lose, you're out type thing. I was a little bit surprised in a positive way by how much Lotus we saw. It was actually played 10 times, tied with Fracture and more than Ascent and Split. And Harbor had a 12% pick rate, higher than Brimstone and Neon. We saw quite a lot of Harbor actually, which is probably about time. We saw quite a while ago that NRG Chip was saying that Harbor is a legit agent and will be viable, and he certainly is based on what we saw there. Now, of course, we've got Gecko coming in, we've got even more things to look out for on the map, and, that does actually quite well align with what we're about to discuss, which is Counter-Strike 2. You guys might have seen this news in the last day or so from, I believe, Richard Lewis first reported this, that Counter-Strike 2 is a legitimate thing. Now, how exactly this works in terms of whether it's in the same client as CSGO, whether it's a new game entirely and they're going to transfer it over time, or whatever the case is, like, there's big questions around CS2 right now, but I know that, of course, Counter-Strike right now is hitting new records almost every day in terms of the player base right now. Like, the numbers are hitting records almost every day in terms of how many players are playing CS around the world. The game's obviously, like, over a decade old at this point, and the rumor has it that they are ready to launch Counter-Strike 2. If you guys are unfamiliar, the idea is here that there's the Source 2 engine, and maybe either then, I think people expected them to just put Source 2 in CSGO. Maybe instead of that, though, they're saying, all right, we're going to do an entirely new game with the Source 2 engine, which is still going to be Counter-Strike. It's still going to have the same maps, maybe with a few remakes in there. But obviously, it's a very exciting prospect for the FPS community in general. Now, of course, what this means for Valorant is that many of the players in the North American side that are playing Valorant at this level, they left CS either because they couldn't quite get the chances anymore, and I think some are looking at Counter-Strike 2 as, potentially a bit of a reset, right? Maybe they're going to change out maybe not the mechanics, right, or maybe not the guns. They might just stay the same in some respects, but I know that some are expecting it to be new engine, new game mechanics potentially. It might be a bit of a reset to the CS community, and some of the players that are now in Valorant that have been formerly in CS, like, they might stay in Valorant. I'm sure many of them will, but many of them are interested in potentially going back to Counter-Strike. And what does that mean for the Valorant scene, especially in North America? I guess we'll see, because Ethan says, some evil geniuses, see you there. He's like, yeah, sure, I'm back to CS as soon as this comes out, which, we'll see if that actually turns out to be true or not. And even dapr says, all right, screw it, who wants to make an open team on CSGO 2, like maybe I'll go back G2 Academy, make it happen. So, you know, especially because I think we'll see from Chet here in a second that Valorant is moving in a direction that some of the players that really value, you know, like competitive integrity, and, you know, Counter-Strike is such a simple game fundamentally. There's not as much chaos as you can get in times in Valorant. So as Chet says here, CSGO 2 coming out, I wonder how many people will switch back from Val, and Som says a lot of us, potentially including himself. So, you know, is this going to just be for content, right? Or is Ethan just going to go back for content and, you know, to actually play Counter-Strike 2 on stream, but not necessarily play it as his day job? Who knows, right? But Som also says, you know, maybe, I mean, a lot of these guys, right, Som still has CS in his name. Like for Sick, for example, it's the same thing. Sick CS is in his Twitter name because that's where he came from. Come to Valorant now, doing rather well. But, you know, some will want to return, and especially because, even as Daph says here, head coach for Liquid CSGO, like, welcome home. And then Chet says, I'm coming home. There's an agent in Valorant that has Pokemon now. So I think this is maybe like a generally kind of widespread perception within some of the players in Valorant that the way the game is moving is not necessarily what they would want to see, because, you know, there's new agents all the time. There's agents that have the Pokemon characters, or, you know, the Wingman or whatever he's called, right? The plants and diffusers, the Spike. It's like, you know, the more things like that they add, the more they're not, I don't think, alienating Valorant's player base, but I think that, you know, a lot of the pro players that value the competitive integrity and the consistency and all those factors very highly are going to get a bit frustrated with this. And Chet seems to be of the same opinion, that Valorant is not moving in the direction that he wants to see, and with Counter-Strike 2 arriving, there's going to be a big incentive for some of these guys to make the switch back. Even Tarik, right, who certainly has blown up Tarik since coming to Valorant, but as he says, please be real, the rumours of Counter-Strike 2. Automatic, of course, who was in Valorant for some time, is like, run it back, let's go back to CS and make it happen again on Cloud9. So very interesting stuff. And speaking of that, right, and Evil Geniuses especially, because, you know, their CSGO team is terrible, and they might need some help from a guy like Ethan potentially to come into that team again. There's been drama with Evil Geniuses in the practice side, even as Will says here, expect the unexpected, and then he drops here in the replies, like, his CSGO, like, obviously he's global and he's been grinding CS, and potentially he's also implying as well, get me back onto CS2 when it arrives. Rumor has it the beta's coming relatively soon, so it's going to be very interesting for the Valorant community how this one develops. But as I say, EG have got some drama going on, because Wedded says when orgs screw over free agent teams. So of course he plays for the Turtle Troop team, formerly known as Squirtle Squad, and they've been through all sorts of drama the last few weeks. They dropped Harmful from the team, they dropped Okonos from the team, and now they only have 3 players remaining. The issue for them is that you are forced to retain 3 players from the team that you qualified with through the open qualifiers. They're doing that right now, but they are running into some issues with their player Ada, who is arguably the star player of the team and is potentially going to get signed by Evil Geniuses. Now, sources say that Evil Geniuses have effectively screwed over Turtle Troop here. So they were eyeing Ada for months now, and we saw a few weeks ago that Ada was spotted, gone from the team. There are rumors that they were replacing Ada just because, you know, presumably he was getting poached by another franchise, or like at least another team in tier 2. Turns out it might be a tier 1 team. Now, EG were constantly changing their mind on whether they wanted him or not. As of last week, Turtle Troop were practicing with pancakes in place of Ada because they presumed he was going to Evil Geniuses. Then though, EG decided they don't want Ada, leaving Turtle Troop in a bit of a bind, because in order to play in challenges, they must retain 3 out of the 5 of their original members, which are Governor, Wedded, and Ada, because of course they got rid of Okonos and Harmful, although Riot did allow them 1 additional roster change due to being a free agent team. After not scrimming with the team for the past week or so, Ada is required now to play with Turtle Troop for the remainder of challenges unless there is an exception made by the Knights. And it's also, like, what I really feel bad for here is Pancakes, right? Because Ada was meant to be gone. Pancakes comes in and gets the chance of practices with him, and then all of a sudden EG aren't signing Ada after all. And this is the thing I don't get about Evil Geniuses, right? Like, apparently they were scouting Ada for months. They've eventually decided not to get him, but they've got a 10-man roster. Well, okay, they've currently got 9 players on their roster. They want the 10th man for some reason, so, you know, they wanted to sign Ada. They've now decided not to, and Ada, from having a chance to be on Evil Geniuses' bench, which, okay, look, it's not an ideal spot, but EG starting team isn't great. They might, if they would have signed Ada, they might have tried him at some point in the starting roster, and of course, you know, you get a good salary, consistent salary and all this on an actual franchise team, whereas Turtle Troop, they're not signed. I don't imagine them, you know, making anything, right, because they're not signed to an official organization, so you can understand the frustration here. But now Ada's got to go back, and EG has effectively screwed them over. That's at least because, you know, they go into this weekend of matches without having all the practice they would have had with Ada. They've, you know, their entire last couple of weeks has been ruined ruins because they've been playing without Ada on the team. Now he's going to be back in the team and things are going to be different again, and it's obviously hurting their chances of doing well in this upcoming weekend of matches, because they play G2 this weekend, which is a big game for them, and they kind of need to win it because they're 1-2 right now. They play G2, top of the group, and okay, maybe if they'd have had Ada the whole time, they'd have been better practiced, better prepared, might have had a good chance to potentially beat G2. They might still do it, but it's obviously very unlikely. And every win they get is super important in their hopes to actually get signed by a proper organization, but also to try and qualify through their group, because their group is the more achievable, I would say, of the two, through in the top 4 to the playoffs that are coming up relatively soon. So this was their team last time. Of course, they brought in Tig, they brought in Mame, which got them a very important result against Moist Moguls in a crucial game last time with Ada. But since then, EG wants him, now he's gone, then they brought Pancakes in and all this stuff, and unfortunately for them, they're in a really difficult spot as a result. So very much enjoyed your thoughts on all this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.